Have you ever wondered why the people who seem the most awake, the most conscious, the most spiritually attuned, are the very ones quietly stepping away from the world? It feels almost paradoxical. Shouldn't awakening make someone more social, more connected, more present? And yet, for thousands of people going through genuine spiritual awakening, the opposite is happening. They are withdrawing silently, avoiding noise, distancing themselves from old patterns, and slipping into a kind of deliberate invisibility without announcing anything. This disappearance is not weakness, not depression, not social rejection. It is a psychological and spiritual response to a reality that no longer fits. When your perception expands, when your awareness sharpens, the world you used to inhabit begins to feel strangely artificial. The conversations feel scripted, the routines feel mechanical, the expectations feel heavy. You start noticing the unconscious patterns, the emotional projections, the subtle tensions people pretend not to feel. And suddenly what used to be normal becomes exhausting. It is not that awakened people stop caring. They stop participating in the theater. They stop performing roles that are no longer aligned with their identity. They pull back because authenticity demands space, clarity demands distance, and higher consciousness demands silence. And if you've experienced this yourself, even in the smallest ways, you already know how unsettling and liberating this shift can be. You already understand how awakening disrupts everything you once assumed was stable, how it reshapes your behavior without your permission, and how it pushes you toward places within yourself you never explored before. You already sense that this withdrawal is not an ending, but the first movement of a deeper transformation waiting to unfold, and this is where things begin to get truly interesting, because what comes next often surprises even those who thought they were ready for change. You can share your own experience in the comments, tell me what part of this resonates with your awakening, and don't forget to like the video and check if you're already subscribed to the channel so you don't miss the rest of this journey. As this withdrawal deepens, something even more subtle begins to happen inside the spiritually awakened person. Their consciousness becomes saturated, almost overloaded, not in a chaotic way, but in a hyper-perceptive, finely tuned way that makes ordinary environments feel overwhelmingly dense. It's as if every unspoken emotion in a room becomes louder, every hidden intention becomes clearer, every energetic shift becomes impossible to ignore. This heightened sensitivity isn't a choice. It is a consequence of expanded awareness. When you start perceiving layers of reality that others overlook, simply being around people becomes an energetic negotiation. You feel what they suppress. You absorb what they project. You sense the dissonance they pretend not to feel. And eventually, your nervous system reaches a point where it cannot comfortably coexist with the constant emotional noise of everyday life. This is why awakened individuals pull away from conversations that used to feel harmless. Small talk becomes draining because it requires shrinking your awareness down to a level that no longer feels natural. Social gatherings feel overstimulating because every interaction carries a weight that others don't even recognize. Start noticing that your mind needs more silence, your spirit needs more space, and your body needs more distance from the chaotic energy fields that people emit without realizing it. What looks like isolation from the outside is, on the inside, a form of self-preservation. It is the psyche recalibrating itself to a new level of perception, and with this saturation of consciousness comes an internal shift that is impossible to reverse. The awakened person stops tolerating environments that conflict with their new frequency. Not out of judgment, not out of superiority, but because remaining in such environments feels like forcing the soul into clothing that no longer fits. This is where the world begins to interpret the awakened as distant, detached, or uninterested, when in reality they are simply navigating a sensitivity that has become too refined for the noise they once tolerated so easily. As this inner saturation grows, the spiritually awakened person begins to experience something even more dramatic, a deep incompatibility with what the world calls normal. It's not that daily life becomes unbearable, it simply becomes impossible to participate in unconsciously. The social rituals that once felt natural now appear scripted, predictable, almost theatrical. You start noticing how often people speak without meaning, how often they act without awareness, how often they wear emotional masks to protect identities that were never truly theirs. And once you see the performance, you cannot unsee it. This creates an immediate fracture between the awakened mind and the societal stage. You watch people argue about things that don't matter, chase goals that don't fulfill them, defend beliefs they never examined, and engage in dramas that drain their own energy. You witness a world where most interactions are exchanges of personas rather than genuine connections. And suddenly, every attempt to fit in feels like self-betrayal. You cannot pretend to be who you were. You cannot shrink your consciousness to make others comfortable. You cannot participate in the scripts you used to recite. It isn't arrogance. It isn't rebellion. It's simply that your awareness has moved beyond the level where the old game made sense. The awakened individual no longer finds meaning in superficial validation, competitive conversations, gossip, forced enthusiasm, or the endless loop of societal expectations. These things feel hollow, artificial, and energetically expensive. Deep inside, you begin craving authenticity, raw, quiet, unfiltered authenticity, and the world rarely offers that in casual settings. So the awakened person withdraws, not to escape life, but to stop participating in an identity that no longer exists. They pull back from social circles that still operate inside the old paradigm, because to remain would require them to dim the very awareness that awakened them. This quiet disappearance is not avoidance. It is alignment, a necessary realignment with a world that matches their new level of perception. As this incompatibility grows, a new weight begins to settle on the spiritually awakened individual, a subtle, almost invisible burden that comes from seeing too clearly. Clarity sounds like a blessing, and in many ways it is, but few talk about its cost. When your perception sharpens, you start noticing everything people try to hide from themselves, the unresolved wounds behind their reactions, the insecurity behind their confidence, the fear behind their anger. You see the emotional patterns they deny, the contradictions they defend, the illusions they cling to, because the truth feels too heavy. And carrying this level of lucidity can feel like holding a mirror no one asked for. This constant awareness creates an internal exhaustion that others cannot see. While most people navigate interactions based on surface-level cues, the awakened person sees the subtext, the tension, the unspoken motives, quietly shaping every moment. It becomes impossible to ignore the dissonance in relationships, the imbalance in conversations, or the emotional debris people scatter unconsciously. Being awake means sensing what others overlook, absorbing what others project, and discerning the hidden layers beneath familiar dynamics. And this sharpness can drain you, not because you are weak, but because the human psyche was never designed to process this much truth at once. Eventually, the awakened person begins to withdraw, for self-preservation, not to escape the world, but to maintain their internal clarity. They choose silence over chaos because noise now feels violent. They choose distance over performance because pretending becomes unbearable. They choose solitude because it is the only place where their perception can breathe without interference. And although the world may interpret this as coldness or detachment, it is actually the natural response of someone who has outgrown the illusions that once sustained them. If you felt this weight yourself, share your experience in the comments. Your perspective may help someone else understand a process they've been silently living through. As the spiritually awakened continue their journey inward, the environments around them start to feel increasingly incompatible. Spaces once familiar, offices, social gatherings, family dynamics, even friendships, begin to carry an invisible tension that exhausts their energy. It's not overt conflict. It's subtle, almost imperceptible, but it chips away at the vitality of someone highly conscious. They start sensing misaligned intentions, emotional distortions, and hidden patterns that most people navigate unconsciously. Every casual conversation can feel heavy, every routine interaction demanding, every expectation draining. The awakened cannot help but perceive the energetic dissonance that others ignore, and over time, these environments become psychologically and spiritually inhospitable. This is not about judgment or superiority. It is about sensitivity and alignment. The awakened person begins to recognize that the more they expose themselves to unawareness, the more they absorb energy that is not theirs to hold. The collective unconscious of a room, an office meeting, a family dinner, a social gathering, can act like a gravitational pull, tugging on their attention, pulling them into conflicts, absorbing them into projections, and clouding their clarity. As a result, they develop a natural aversion to environments that no longer serve their inner evolution. What others perceive as detachment is actually a protective adaptation, a method for preserving clarity and maintaining resonance with their own consciousness. Over time, this creates a shift in priorities. External appearances, social validation, and conventional achievements lose significance. What becomes essential is a space where authenticity, depth, and conscious interaction are possible. The awakened begin to seek environments that match their frequency, cultivating connections that nurture insight rather than drain energy. This process naturally filters relationships, activities, and even lifestyles, leading to a quieter, more intentional existence that may appear unconventional, but is deeply aligned with the evolution of their awareness. As the awakened step back from environments that no longer resonate, a deeper, more internal phase begins to unfold. What many spiritual traditions refer to as the hermit phase. This is not withdrawal in fear or despair, but a conscious retreat designed to realign mind, body, and spirit with the expanded perception that has emerged. In this phase, the awakened begin to create inner space, a sanctuary where clarity can develop undisturbed by the noise of collective unconsciousness. It is in this solitude that integration occurs, the assimilation of experiences, the processing of emotional and energetic saturation, and the establishment of boundaries that protect the delicate equilibrium of heightened awareness. During this period, the awakened learn to distinguish between energies that belong to themselves and those they have been absorbing unconsciously. They discover the importance of mental, emotional, and spiritual hygiene, establishing practices that cleanse and balance their perception. Daily habits may shift radically. Silence replaces unnecessary conversation. Nature becomes a refuge. Reflective journaling or meditation becomes a stabilizing anchor, and the recognition of internal rhythms takes precedence over external demands. The hermit phase is a time of rebuilding, refining, and strengthening one's capacity to navigate the world without losing the hard-earned clarity that awakening provides. It is also a phase of profound psychological transformation. Old identities and previously held attachments begin to dissolve because they no longer resonate with the elevated state of awareness. The withdrawal is both protective and evolutionary. It allows the awakened to examine their values, intentions, and purpose without external interference. The mind becomes a laboratory, the soul a workshop, and the body a vessel attuned to subtler frequencies. In this hermetic space, the awakened begin to cultivate resilience, patience, and insight, preparing to eventually re-engage with the world, but now from a place of authenticity and alignment rather than obligation or habit. As the hermit phase deepens, a profound rupture occurs with old identities and past connections. The spiritually awakened begin to realize that the people, places, and roles that once felt essential no longer resonate with their evolving consciousness. Relationships that were grounded in the familiarity of old versions of themselves start to feel incompatible, not because the others are flawed, but because the awakened have shifted frequencies. The truth of their inner alignment can no longer coexist with the unconscious, patterns that dominated their previous social spheres. In essence, the awakened are no longer available to participate in dynamics that no longer reflect who they have become. This rupture is subtle yet unmistakable. Conversations that once flowed naturally now feel forced. Shared activities no longer spark interest. Even environments once comforting now carry a hidden tension. The awakened understand that continuing to inhabit these old roles or maintain these connections would require a constant compromise of their clarity, a repeated denial of their new perception. It is not a matter of rejection, but of necessity. To preserve the integrity of their consciousness, they must step away from influences that pull them back into unawareness. The distance allows the awakened to honor their own evolution while gently releasing attachments that no longer serve their path. Simultaneously, this rupture brings an awakening to discernment. The spiritually awakened begin to identify which relationships and commitments truly align with their growth and which belong to a previous version of their self. They cultivate subtlety in presence, maintaining connection where resonance exists, but choosing silence, space, and absence where it does not. It is in this deliberate navigation of relational frequency that they reclaim their energy, sharpen their awareness, and protect the integrity of their expanded perception. If you recognize this process in your own life, or have experienced this kind of subtle separation from the familiar, share your thoughts in the comments. Your reflections can help others understand that this transformation is not isolation, but a necessary evolution of consciousness. As the spiritually awakened navigate this deliberate withdrawal, they begin constructing a new internal center, a sanctuary of clarity, stability, and alignment. This center is not a physical space, but a psychological and energetic one, cultivated through conscious presence, reflection, and the careful management of attention and energy. It becomes the anchor that allows the awakened to maintain balance while observing the world without becoming entangled in its unconscious patterns. In this space, the mind is not scattered, the heart is not overextended, and the spirit is not diluted by external expectations. Every choice, every interaction, every thought is filtered through this internal alignment, preserving the integrity of their perception. In building this new center, the awakened refine their ability to recognize and release energies that do not belong to them. Emotional saturation from other people no longer infiltrates their consciousness unchecked. Subtle manipulations and unconscious projections are met with discernment rather than absorption. Their sensitivity, once a source of fatigue, becomes a tool for insight, allowing them to navigate complex social and environmental landscapes without losing themselves. This internal recalibration strengthens boundaries, reinforces resilience, and cultivates a subtle sense of sovereignty over their own experience, giving them the freedom to engage selectively and authentically. The construction of this inner sanctuary also supports a deeper integration of lessons learned during periods of solitude and withdrawal. Insights about human nature, the dynamics of relationships, and the impermanence of external structures are absorbed without external validation. The awakened learn to trust their perception and their intuition, no longer relying on social cues to affirm their reality. This evolving center enables them to operate from a higher frequency, making decisions and forming connections based on resonance rather than obligation. As a result, the awakened begin to interact with the world in ways that are intentional, aligned, and deeply reflective of their evolved consciousness, preparing them for meaningful engagement when the time and energy are right. As this inner center solidifies, a new phenomenon emerges, the rise of the consciously disappeared, those who inhabit a space between worlds. Spiritually awakened individuals, while still present in society, are no longer fully absorbed by its patterns. They move quietly through daily life, observing and participating selectively, like border dwellers navigating the edge between conventional reality and higher consciousness. Their presence is subtle, yet profoundly influential, creating an energetic footprint that shifts environments without forcing change. They exist in a state of conscious observation, choosing interactions based on alignment rather than expectation, and cultivating influence through awareness rather than imposition. This phase allows the awakened to engage with life in a way that preserves their clarity and authenticity. They are available to those who resonate with their frequency, yet immune to the unconscious dramas that once drained their energy. Social media, professional environments, and habitual social structures are navigated with discernment. Time and attention are allocated deliberately, ensuring that every action supports rather than compromises their consciousness. The awakened no longer expend energy on superficial validation or conventional approval. Instead, they focus on cultivating meaningful connections, developing insight, and offering presence in situations that can receive it without distortion. The emergence of these disappeared individuals illustrates a profound shift in social dynamics. They are no longer defined by external participation, but by internal integrity. Their withdrawal from conventional engagement is not isolation, it is strategic preservation. It allows them to maintain resonance with their evolving perception, to operate from a higher frequency, and to become living examples of a different way of being. Over time, this approach subtly influences those around them, creating pockets of consciousness and sparking shifts that ripple outward quietly yet powerfully. Through this careful balance, the awakened embody a model of existence that is aligned, intentional, and profoundly transformative, moving through the world without being consumed by it. Eventually, the spiritually awakened reach a point of reintegration, a return to the world, but never in the same way. They do not re-enter the old systems of expectation or conformity. Instead, they bring with them a new frequency, a quiet authority grounded in clarity, authenticity, and conscious presence. They engage selectively, with intention and discernment, offering their energy, insight, and creativity only where it resonates. In this way, they influence without imposing, teach without preaching, and connect without losing themselves in the unconscious dynamics of the past. Their presence is transformative precisely because it is subtle and aligned, a living example of consciousness navigating life with integrity. This return is not about perfection or heroism, it is about alignment. The awakened act from a place of inner sovereignty, making choices that honor their truth while respecting the natural evolution of those around them. They no longer chase validation, approval, or belonging because their center is self-sustaining. And this creates a ripple effect. Others begin to sense the difference, to feel the resonance of someone operating from clarity rather than compulsion, and to question their own unconscious patterns. The awakened offer a space in which others can reflect, awaken, or simply exist in the presence of conscious awareness without pressure or judgment. If you have followed this journey to the end of the video, take a moment to acknowledge it in the comments. Write something like, "I stayed with this till the end," or "This message was for me." Let me know your reflections, insights, or experiences that connect with this process. If this content has resonated with you, give the video a like to support more conscious exploration, and consider subscribing so you can continue receiving insights designed to expand awareness and nurture higher perception. And for those ready to continue this path, there's another video waiting that complements this discussion. Click and explore further, moving deeper into understanding the subtle dynamics of spiritual awakening and conscious living.